somebody who approves of what he did, and that's very difficult. To go another step and say, yeah, and I feel bad for him, or I really understand where he's coming from, yeah, that gets converted pretty easily into somebody else's sense that I approve of what he did. There seemed to be a little coterie that had grown up around Kaczynski. A few people that were on a first-name basis with him, like me. There was some palace intrigue, people whispering in Kaczynski's ears about other people to discredit others, elbowing and jostling for position, favorite son status or something like that. So it had this feeling of a queen and her court.
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who does Ted Kaczynski love most of all?
Isn't that sick? Yeah. A psychiatrist in Los Angeles approached Kaczynski about a similar thing to what I had. In fact, reading his letter to Kaczynski, it was a caricature of my worst self-portrayal of what I was doing in this whole deal. Talk about palace intrigue, there was flattery, there was blatant sucking up going on in this doctor's letter. But my letter was just a more subtle version of sucking up to the Unabomber. It was just naked ambition, whereas my ambition had some clothes on. So this was a turf war inside the palace. I decided to whisper in Kaczynski's ear. It turned out that this doctor had done some very, very minor media thing regarding the O.J. Simpson trial. So I casually dropped that fact into a letter that I wrote to Kaczynski. You know, he's a prominent forensic psychiatrist who appeared in the national media on the O.J. Simpson trial, blah, 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 right? I essentially assassinated him through the mail, purely out of ambition. Kaczynski had a nightmare, a recurrent nightmare, that he would wake up to find his cabin in the midst of a shopping center parking lot. In the most profane location of technological civilization, the shopping center. And that nightmare, of course, prefigures his imprisonment. That's where he found himself. He woke up and he was in the midst of technological hell. When the airplane went overhead and he shook his fist at it, it wasn't only because it was a noisy distraction. Kaczynski experienced the whole of technology. It was like a metaphor for him. Guided all his thinking and all his experience. That technology was,
Evil!
Evil. Good. That technology was evil.
As such, he, Ted Kaczynski, was speaking on behalf of all mankind.
He put himself in that position with all the hubris that entails. It's just the classic story of biblical prophecy. You say to the people, if you continue doing such and such, then so and so is going to happen. Ezekiel lies outside the city on his side for 40 days at a time to get attention. Hey, look, you've fallen by the wayside. You're not following God's commandments, and you're going to be in trouble. John Brown was saying, if you continue to run a society based on the enslavement of human beings, then bad things are going to happen. Who is this guy standing at the city gate saying, everything you know is wrong, everything you do is bad? But doesn't mean they're wrong. John Brown was not wrong. Slavery is evil.
And Ezekiel?
Well, Ezekiel turned out to be quite right. Right? The city fell. could be said that Kaczynski was just impatient, that he wasn't willing to wait to let technology destroy the world so that people could then realize that he was right all along. One of the worst things I've ever done in my life, this is a terrible thing to confess, I used disposable diapers for my son. Oh, big deal, you say. So disposable diapers, everybody. It's terrible. I don't think I should go to hell and burn for that. I don't think I should be killed for that. But my implication in the horrors of technology, the burgeoning landfills, the use of chemicals in the environment to both produce and take care of these diapers, the connection can be drawn. And I'm culpable. The scary part about technology, and I suppose this was true about slavery, is it works. I change my kids' diapers, I throw them away, I never see them again. It works.
You're corresponding with Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, things are going swimmingly.
The halcyon period.
Yes, they were the good old days. We were writing back and forth 2 times a week. I was on the phone with Michael Mello, and I was on the phone with Richard Bonney, who was another lawyer involved in this thing. My life was Kaczynski Central. It's just like a little support group, you know? I mean, you just can't go around telling everybody, oh yeah, I had a letter from Ted Kaczynski today. You can't just tell anybody. So Mello and I had a little world where we could talk about this guy with a common understanding, where we didn't have to go through the business of explaining how, well, I don't really think people should get killed and all this stuff. We could just take for granted that it was okay what we were doing. Kaczynski's getting legal help. He thinks he's going to get psychiatric help of me to debunk his diagnoses.
He's going to get psychiatric help.
Exactly. And I'm going to get, I'm hoping, I'm going to get published. And it's feeling like that's really going to happen. So what we have here is a situation where everybody's self-interest is being taken care of, all at the same time. It's Adam Smith's utopia. I wrote the preface to Michael Mello's book, the foreword actually, where I sort of systematically picked apart these psychiatric evaluations. I sent that to Kaczynski. And all of this time, he and I were engaged in this long cat and mouse game about whether or not he was going to sit for an interview with me. Would I be the first person to get an interview with the elusive Unabomber? Boy, wouldn't that put me on the map, landing the great white whale of the interview with Kaczynski, lunch with people in New York, a contract, all sorts of shit. Think of this as an audition. Here's how I'll write about you. And I sent him the foreword. And he loved it. Superb. I got an A from Professor Kaczynski on my paper. On the basis of this audition, I got the job of coming out to Colorado to interview him. And, you know, it's just like there was a kind of gratification about that. I mean, here I am, somebody with no resources except a typewriter or a computer and a stamp. Enough computers, enough stamps, and sooner or later, the guy says yes. I got a message on my answering machine from Michael Mello. God, we're in a terrible mess here. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know if this can be fixed. He'd gotten a letter from Kaczynski expressing anger and disappointment in me for lying to him about certain arrangements. He thinks you have a contract to write an article about him for the New York Times magazine, that just wasn't true. And I said, oh, well, it sounds like a big misunderstanding, you know, it's like bound to happen. Then I got the letter. What Mello hadn't told me was that the source for all this information was Michael Mello. Kaczynski, you know, quoted me in classic Ted Kaczynski footnotes and everything else. He quoted me passages from Michael Mello's letters to him, which made it clear that Michael had been talking about me to Kaczynski for months. I was on the inside, and yet simultaneously I was on the outside. For a moment there, I could see from his point of view, here's a guy, he's in jail. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's never met any of these people. He's got an obscured view. He's got all sorts of people whispering in his ear about everything. He's gone a long way toward trusting me. he gets this information.